Oh, I know I'm a big child, but it's time we get started on some reviews of He-Man and Masters of the Universe. Hey legends, welcome along to the channel. In this video we're getting into, in preparation for Masters of the Universe Revelation, we're going to do a series of reviews on here of the original He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. The opening story in this is the Cosmic Comet, and before we get into that, I should say the opening to this cartoon, like pretty much every 80s cartoon, gave you everything you really needed to know about He-Man, Masters of the Universe. Like, it opens up and it's Prince Adam telling you about how he becomes He-Man, and you know, he holds aloft his magic sword and said by the power of Greyskull he transforms into He-Man, and then he blasts Cringer, his fearless friend as he calls him, but he's a coward, and every time he's on screen he's afraid and he's always running and hiding from danger. But whenever He-Man blasts him with the sword of power, he turns into Battle Cat, grows slightly in stature and gets all his armour on him. He's like fierce and roars, and you know, complete opposite of his alter ego, pretty much the same as He-Man. When he's Prince Adam, he's very clumsy and useless essentially, and then when he changes into He-Man, he's the strongest man in the galaxy. And you find out in the opening that there's only a couple of other people know his secret identity: the sorceress of Castle Greyskull, Man-at-Arms, and Orko, the little flying magician kinda. He's got no legs, just arms. The best thing he could compare him to would be Slimer. Really, he's like a little red hat. You know, I'm just going by, you know, just a body, head and arms. But in Orko's case, it's like you don't see any eyes. There's just like a wee mask on him. He's got this little hood and two little ears, and on his chest he's got this 0 on it, or this O, and for years we all thought that the O stood for Orko. His name is Orko. So I was actually listening to, strangely enough, a podcast with Kevin Smith, and as I did say in the last video in this series, or the opening to this, about Revelation, Kevin Smith is the showrunner, executive producer on that. His podcast, Smodcast, he was interviewing, and right now the name escapes me, but it was one of the original artists that worked on He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, who later went on to do Batman the Animated Series and everything. And he let slip that the reason they put the O on Orko's chest was because that was how much money they got paid to come up with the characters for He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So that's a little bit of useless information for you, but I'm full of it. This episode, spoilers before we go ahead, the Cosmic Comet, the opening, Evelyn, Beastman are outside Castle Greyskull, and the Cosmic Comet is coming across above them, and Evelyn kind of drains some of the power from the comet to boost her own powers. There's a lot of sorcery and magic in this show, and she's able for once to open the gates to Castle Greyskull. Skeletor, Evelyn, Beastman, all the bad guys in the show are forever trying to take over Castle Greyskull and get its powers. So they open the gates and He-Man is in there waiting on them. Straight away we're into the action. There's no, as I said at the start, the opening kind of gives you everything you need to know about the cartoon, and there's not really an origin story that I can remember. Now, going into this review series, I'm going in fresh. This is the first time I've watched it since I was a kid. Like, I grew up on this here. Like, I was in primary school when this originally came out. I was only something like 5 or 6 years old when this was originally on television. So I was coming home from school to watch this. Yeah, so He-Man's in Castle Greyskull waiting on them. He comes out, confronts them, drives them off basically, and he's like, that was so simple. But the sorceress says this was just a test of the Cosmic Comet, and Skeletor is going to try and take over the comet, which he does pretty quickly in this episode. Him and Evelyn combine their powers, and he is able to possess the comet essentially. And the heroes, He-Man and Man-at-Arms and Teela, are sent. She's Man-at-Arms' daughter but head of the Royal Guard. They're sent to see Zagras, the keeper of the comets, to see if he can help them in defeating Skeletor. But whenever they find him, they find out he's completely, like, he's just lost all confidence in his powers, and he tells them that originally there were 2 cosmic comets and they were good, and he tried to control them, and doing so and casting a spell on them, he accidentally destroyed one of them. So the remaining comet over time through loneliness became evil, and this is why Skeletor has so simply taken control of it. They're on the same wavelength. So Skeletor casts an aura spell onto the comet to send creatures to find Zagras and get him out of the way, because Skeletor, you know, he's not stupid. He knows if anybody can stand in his way, it's Zagras. But the comet sends down these 3 other little comets, and they turn into these monsters, and there's a confrontation between Man-at-Arms, Teela, these 3 monsters. At this point in the episode, He-Man is in his other disguise as Prince Adam, so he's been useless and good for nothing. But Man-at-Arms, Teela get knocked out during the fight, and Adam transforms into He-Man, comes and wipes them out. And essentially all that's left afterwards is a couple of little rocks and pebbles and stuff from the broken down. The creatures were made out of parts of the actual comet, so they just broke down into like stone. Orko like lifts them all up, takes them away. We take Zagras now back to Castle Greyskull so that Castle Greyskull, so the sorcerers can help him. My mind drifted there. I was kind of thinking, what do you call Skeletor's place in this cartoon? That's Snake Mountain, if memory serves. What you do see Snake Mountain in this one, but it doesn't reference the name. So I'm pretty sure, like, I'm going right back 25 years at this point to try and remember. No, actually, gosh, 35 years at this point. I'm older than I thought I was. Anyway, we're back at Castle Greyskull. We're trying to help Zagras. He is like just a shell of a man, really. He's got no confidence. There's nothing I can do to stop this. And Skeletor decides to send the comet on a collision course with Castle Greyskull to destroy the gates so they can get in and take the power from the sorceress. But Zagras says if only we could make another comet made of good energy to try and cancel out the evil energy of the comet that Skeletor is in control of, but we would need parts of the actual comet itself. And thankfully, during the earlier fight, Orko lifted all these little rocks and stuff that was left over from the monsters, so the sorceress manages to construct them back together to make a new comet. And He-Man, Teela, Man-at-Arms, Orko all surround the new comet along with the sorceress, and they have to try and think of all the good and all the noble energy that they have, been the good guys in this show, and try and transfer that into the comet and think about all the good people. And Eternia is where this place is, where the He-Man takes place, and they managed to actually bring the comet back to life, essentially restoring the comet that Zagras accidentally destroyed earlier on. And the problem is now they can't get the comet to take off from Castle Greyskull, and they need to try and slow down the other comet that's on a collision course. So the sorceress uses her powers to throw He-Man into the sky, and he flies up and grabs the comet in the sky, and he's actually holding it back. Like, that's the thing about He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. It's always his strength that wins out in the end, and most of the things, and he holds it back long enough that Zagras is able to get his confidence back enough to get the comet off the ground. And as it lifts off, He-Man drops from the other comet, and the two comets collide outside Castle Greyskull, and what good wins out in the end? Basically, the comet been lonely, turning evil, and he gets his friend back. Pretty much as an instantaneous transformation, and the two comets, of course it's cartoon, comets can speak, stuff floating about here, they thank He-Man and the sorceress and fly off on their way again. As they're leaving, Skeletor, Evelyn, Beastman, they're in this little fighter plane sort of a thing, and they heard the explosion of the comets connecting. They're on their way to Castle Greyskull, and Skeletor is like, yes, did you hear that explosion? Castle Greyskull is going to be wide open for us to take over. We've finally won. And Beastman points out in the distance, and he's like, oh, there's two comets coming, and Skeletor can't believe his eyes, which is an incredibly weird thing for me to say, as in Skeletor hasn't got any eyes, he's just a skull. But the two comets whiz past and knock their fighter plane. I'm just calling it fighter plane because I can't actually remember the name of this thing that they fly about in, but that's pretty much where the episode kind of finishes that. Then we sort of, at the end of it, we go back to the royal palace, and we see, and please forgive me, I forget the name of the king and the queen in this episode. Adam's parents, he's Prince Adam, king and queen's his mother and father, and Zagras is trying to learn him a little bit of magic, and he's concentrating on these three orbs that's floating about above him, and he's like, don't lose control now. And the king says, you're doing a great job, son. And he says, thank you, father. And of course he loses control of the orb, and then one starts chasing Orko around the palace throne room, and that's where it finishes off, essentially. The thing I loved about these cartoons is at the end of them, there was always one of the characters that would come up and break the fourth wall. Is it the third wall or the fourth wall, where they actually talk to the viewer? And this, at the end of every, it happens in, I do believe, every episode, if memory serves. I had completely forgotten about this until we got to the end of this, and it's Man-at-Arms actually comes on screen, starts talking to the kids, the viewers, the children at home, watching the episode, and he's like, in today's episode, Zagras had lost all his self-worth, and he's like, basically the story, the moral of the story essentially is, if at first you fail, try again, sort of thing. Don't give up on yourself, always believe in yourself. And he's like, until next time, bye bye. So the show is absolutely brilliant. This was such a treat for me to sit down and watch this again. And there is a character in there, Zagras, and the name of the actor that did the voice for him is completely escaping me now. I should have checked it before I started recording this episode, but it just hit home the fact that Kevin Smith has been executive producer and showrunner on the new Revelation series. Ralph Garman, who he does Hollywood Babylon with the podcast, he does a lot of impressions, and this character of Zagras is one of the impressions that he is really, really famous for. Now again, forgive me, I can't recall the name of the guy that did the voice, but it's just, this opening episode was just like, you know, of Kevin Smith, a showrunner and executive producer. This is right up his street, and so good, guys. This, I can't wait to get into more episodes. Honestly, this show is so good. If you've never seen it, try and find it somewhere. I would actually recommend you just buying the box set, because they're not that expensive anymore, and in saying that, they're probably free to view somewhere online.